Rosenberg with The Stock Trip, where we do interviews for the Reddit investor community. And today we're with Ronan Levy, the CEO of Field Trip Health. And before we get started, I want to mention that I am an investor in Field Trip Health and in the sector, and I am not a financial analyst, and I am not giving stock or investment advice at all. Please do your own research. Okay, so to get started, first, thank you for joining us, Ronan. It's a real pleasure to have you here. I'm a big fan of Field Trip.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, and thank you for including me in the DCRIM DC event that you had a few months ago as well.
Oh, it was certainly my pleasure. So thank you for talking with me again. I'm glad I didn't chase you off. So anyway, I kind of want to keep this short, and we're really sort of putting together these questions for a more naive investor, for a newer investor, for people who are getting a lot of their information off of Reddit, and who people are just interested in the psychedelic sector to begin with. And so can you start by telling us what Field Trip Health is?
Yeah, so Field Trip Health, our view is really to build the end-to-end development and delivery of psychedelic therapies. So that means actually building out the clinics and the locations where psychedelic therapies are going to be administered. We have 5 locations operating right now in Toronto, New York, LA, Chicago, and Atlanta, opening up in San Diego and Houston and Amsterdam, and expanding quite rapidly, providing ketamine-assisted therapies, but with the view to working with all legalized or approved psychedelic therapies in the future. At the same time, we are doing a lot of the work to develop new products and new psychedelic molecules, because as great as psilocybin and MDMA are, doesn't mean that we can't do better. Either make them shorter, longer, more intense, less intense. You know, there's a number of things that can be done to, I won't say necessarily enhance psychedelic therapies, but offer alternatives to make them more accessible and reach more people. And so we're doing that with our first molecule, which is FT104. It's a novel psychedelic molecule for which we can get IP around it. And what's great about it is, in its pharmacological profile, it's very similar to psilocybin, but it's about half the trip time. So instead of having to spend an entire day with a doctor or a therapist, you can potentially have a very therapeutic experience in half a day, which lowers the overall cost.
Definitely see the merits of cutting that experience time down dramatically.
Yeah, exactly.
So just in keeping with Field Trip, in going on your website, you guys have 3 different divisions: the health, the discovery, and the digital. Can you just give us a synopsis of what each of those are and how they're working together?
Yeah, so Field Trip Health is building out the physical locations, so the clinics that are currently opening up across Canada and the US and Europe. Field Trip Discovery is doing the research and development work with FT104, as well as some cultivation work with psilocybin producing mushrooms. And Field Trip Digital really is kind of encompassing both projects, which is we're developing new digital tools, both to support our patients, to create engagement, as well as to enhance our R&D efforts. So it just kind of sits as a silo, not as a silo, but it kind of underpins the entire Field Trip Health and Field Trip Discovery operational framework.
So that's really a lot of stuff. And let me just ask you real quick. So you talked about using whatever is available and legal that you're permitted to use. What is your relationship like with the Canadian government and with the US government? And, you know, are you in good standing with them, or is this a rebellion and they're not with you? What are people thinking as far as your progress and what's happening here?
Yeah, no, we're in good standing everywhere we operate. You know, the therapies we're offering right now are using medically approved medicines. You know, ketamine is an FDA approved drug. It is approved as an anesthetic, but we're using it off label, but that's perfectly okay. Many drugs are used off label, and we're showing really great results. So we make sure to comply with all laws, with all regulations, with all colleges and boards of doctors, to make sure we're doing everything exactly as we need to be doing it to show great results and keep everyone safe and operating properly. And in Jamaica, you know, where we're doing our cultivation work, not only are we in compliance with all the laws, the government has been very open in endorsing our work, because they see the work and the innovation we're creating with cultivation of psilocybin producing mushrooms in Jamaica is a great opportunity for the University of West Indies and for the country of Jamaica. So not only, you know, are we compliant, we're actually very welcomed in many of the jurisdictions that we operate in.
I can't even believe I've lived long enough to see that happen.
No
really,
kidding.
I mean, like I literally, I never I imagined cannabis in my lifetime, but I never imagined psychedelics. Never.
For sure. Yeah.
So, you had talked about you were expanding into a couple of other cities, and what is the plan for Field Trip? There's going to be a lot of expansion, a lot of growth. There's so much interest right now in the psychedelic field, and I don't know of any people doing what you're doing right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Growth is exactly what we're focused on. We expect there are going to be incredible demand for psychedelic therapies, especially as psilocybin and MDMA start to get legalized or approved in the next couple of years. So we're at 5 operating locations. We should, I believe, and I have to be a little bit conscious about what our public disclosure says, but I believe it says that we'll be at 20 locations, either operating or in construction by the end of 2021, with a view to scaling up to about 75 locations over the next few years. So really an aggressive growth plan combined with our efforts on R&D through Field Trip Discovery. There's lots to do and lots of growth happening.
So sort of on that topic, while we're here and talking about it, how protectable is the Field Trip business model? I mean, is it something that you feel like it's going to be first to market and doing it best, or do you think, or is it something proprietary that you guys have?
The answer is yes. It's a combination of both. We're focused on being a very early mover in the clinical delivery of care, and building out those relationships with the doctors and the patients and the payers and the community that really will make us a central point of psychedelic therapy going forward. So as other entrants try to get in, we'll be pretty entrenched. And even then, it's like we're actually quite supportive of the fact that other companies are opening, because even at 75 locations, we won't be able to handle anywhere near the demand that we expect to happen. So as long as there's good quality players out there, we're actually very supportive of them entering the space. But first mover advantage, building a strong brand with our drug development work. We have filed provisional patents on FT104, composition of matter, all the way down to utility patents around that, because we think it's a really great new molecule and will lead to great outcomes. So there's IP as well as the other kind of strategic opportunities. And then the one thing that really differentiates us from all the other companies, because we're focused on the end-to-end development and delivery of psychedelic therapies, there's so many synergies that interweave, that will make, discovery will make Field Trip Health better, and Field Trip Health will help inform Field Trip Discovery. So there's a lot of a virtuous cycle of feedback built into our business model as well.
And continuing a little bit with what you were just talking about there, as far as your expansion and reaching people, one of the biggest questions that people had when I threw it out to Reddit to ask people what they were wondering about as far as Field Trip goes, a lot of them had said that, a few had said that they had been to a Field Trip clinic, and a few others had said that they had taken a look at it, and everyone agreed that it was a good value, but it is still prohibitively expensive for, quite a few people paying out of pocket. Mm-hmm. And the questions range from what is Field Trip's expectation with the ever-changing payer system here in the US, and is there any expectation of working to make things more affordable for people who are less able to afford?
Yeah, that's one of the biggest challenges in the psychedelic industry, broadly speaking. The big challenge is that when you're dealing with doctors and therapists and professionals, and you need to have their time and attention for potentially an entire day, it's inevitably going to be expensive, just the way professionals need to be compensated. So yeah, we recognize that it's not an insignificant expense. We're looking into different options in terms of making it more affordable, providing financing options or different pricing structures or payment structures to make it a little bit more accessible. Certainly, if you have access to extended healthcare, some of the cost will be covered through that as well. Typically, we see that range from anywhere from 10 to 70% of the total
Is
cost.
Is Canada already contributing with the healthcare?
No, it's out of pocket in Canada as well. But if you do have extended benefits, it'll cover some of the psychotherapy aspects of it. I do expect that we'll start to see insurance coverage happen soon, especially based on my understanding of the parity laws in the US, which is, if a treatment is shown to be as good, if not more effective than an alternative treatment that is covered, then insurers can be liable. So I think we'll quickly see a lot of evidence around ketamine assisted therapy.
I do know that I do know of at least one ketamine practitioner in Colorado who says that he was, I think, the very first insurance paid ketamine therapy.
Yeah, it's
so
certainly
starting
possible
to happen here in the US a little bit, for sure.
Yeah, and that's going to help. And truthfully, we're always trying to think of innovative ways to support people who may not have the insurance or be able to cover the cost of it as well. It's not there's no easy solution to it, but it's something we're very cognizant of because we think the therapies we're offering and psychedelic therapies can help a lot of people, and bringing the cost down is one of the key considerations in trying to help it scale.
All right, and then just to move into two last sort of investor questions, and then I think that's about all the time we're going to have, unfortunately. But can you talk about your partnership with MAPS and what's going on there?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had a great relationship with MAPS for a long time. We're obviously big supporters of their work, but there was an opportunity to host one of their clinical trials looking at MDMA-assisted therapy for the treatment of eating disorders and anorexia nervosa. So our Toronto location has been selected as a trial site for that particular clinical trial, which will be happening, I think, later this year, or early next year. And the advantages to us are that our therapists and our team are going to get access to understanding the MAPS protocol very firsthand. We get a great relationship with MAPS that I think will position us to be a great partner for them as they start to roll out their MDMA assisted therapy, which is expected to get approval either next year or the year after. So, it just positions us to be a great partner to them because they're going to be first across the line and providing an FDA approved psychedelic therapy, fingers crossed at least.
Yeah, I'm certainly hopeful. It's really exciting what they're doing over there. So, and then sort of the big question that everybody has is the psychedelic sector seems to be based entirely on enthusiasm and speculation with almost no fundamentals whatsoever, and just rumors. And the whole thing is, I've never seen fluctuation in a market like I've seen sometimes as much as 100% twice over the course of a day.
Yeah.
And then there are some that are backed and have actual business models like Field Trip and a few of the big ones. What is your feeling on on the market right now, as far as, being able to safely put money in there and look for growth over the long term? I understand the short term is sort of a disaster, but the market is kind of what it is. And I was wondering what your thoughts are on the market. I don't know if you can comment on your stock, but on the market as a whole, whatever you're free to say on that.
Yeah. The market is very unpredictable, not just in psychedelics. And psychedelics, it seems to be a little bit more extreme in some of like the fluctuations. But the way I look at it from an investor, from trying to put on the lens of an investor looking at the psychedelic industry, is that I genuinely believe that psychedelic therapies are going to be the most important platform for the future of mental, emotional, and behavioral health treatments, that it's going to fundamentally displace most current approaches just because the safety and efficacy profiles of psychedelic therapies are so far greater than most current treatments that it's hard to possibly conclude that this will not be the preferred choice in the future. And when you think about the fact that close to 2 billion people are expected to experience a clinically diagnosable event of depression or anxiety at some point in their lives, that hundreds of millions of people are diagnosed every year with depression and anxiety and other mental health disorders, that the pandemic is tripling, the incidence of depression symptoms right now. Mental health is going to be a huge, huge business and a huge, huge impact. And I really believe that psychedelic therapies are going to lead the way. So if you look at it through that lens, even though most valuations of companies are not connected to fundamentals now, the companies that are going to be at the top of this industry and this sector in the future, I think are going to be some of the biggest and most important industries globally. So I think there's a lot of potential upside, even though there's a lot of, there's a lot of value already priced into the value of some stocks, but I think there's still lots of upside to go.
All right, and my final question before I let you go, and thank you for your time, is, and this is probably the most important and controversial question. Some other competitors of yours already have T-shirts and swag that they're releasing. Does Field Trip have any? I don't see I'm just saying that, it's out there.
Yeah, we do have some swag. We like have the third party supplier of shirts and hats and all that kind of stuff. So far, we haven't opened it up to the public yet. Although we've had a lot of interest in doing so, it just hasn't been our priority right now. Our focus is trying to build out our clinics and get engagement.
Well, I think if you go to the Reddit forum on Field Trip investors, you could probably sell 700 of them today. But
new
anyway.
business line for us. But it'll be coming, I imagine.
Well, Ronan Levy, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for coming and talking about Field Trip. As I mentioned, I am an investor, so I am a little bit biased. I'm invested in Field Trip and the field, and I am not a financial analyst nor making stock recommendations. But I do thank you very much for coming and talking to us, and good luck with Field Trip in the future. I look forward to seeing what you guys are doing.
Thanks, man. Really appreciate you having me on.
Okay.